What's up? It's another episode of the List My Products e-commerce podcast. And today I've got Braxton from HitMoxie.com. What's going on, Braxton?
Hey, how you doing? Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about the amazing automations that Braxton's bringing to small and medium business owners. With listmyproducts.com, I know a lot of you are aware that, once we get your products up online, you're really struggling with getting back to customers, make sure you maintain those review requests, as well as have important customer service aspects in place. So, Braxton, without further ado, I want to not only jump into your story, but how you're helping people today. So if we can start with all that in the way, with how you got into marketing in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a fun little journey I took. So how I got into marketing originally was the short version of the story is I got into it through trying to market another side hustle that I had going on. I was in my early 20s. I was recently married, just had a baby. And long story short, what basically happened is I realized that I enjoyed marketing the side hustle more than I did actually doing the side hustle itself. So that's kind of where it started. And the first book, I used to read a lot of fiction, and stuff like that. And so kind of a turning point for me in a lot of ways was around that time, because that's when I started reading a lot of self-help books, and that kind of bled into a bunch of marketing books. And that's when I discovered Seth Godin. And it was one of his books that really kicked me in the butt and inspired me to kind of pursue this whole marketing thing. That's when I realized there was kind of something to it. So
You not only, obviously you operate your own company today, but you've kind of walked the walk for a while. You off camera, we spoke, briefly about time Infusionsoft, becoming Keep. How long and how many different touches have you been in this game for? Because it's not just what you're doing today. It's been a lot of different stops along the journey.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, just for context, I have zero formal education whatsoever. Absolutely. Literally, I didn't even graduate high school, and I don't have a GED, nothing like that. And so, and part of the reason why I didn't end up going to college was I thought it would be a waste of time and money if I went not knowing what I wanted to do. And so I'm in my early 20s. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to spend the time and the money and the resources doing that. And I started doing all these other little side hustles. And as I did that, kind of what I alluded to earlier, I picked up on marketing and realized this is, I kind of had this interest in psychology growing up when I was in high school and things like that. And so that was an interest. And I kind of saw how marketing had a psychological element to it in terms of consumer psychology, things like that. So that's where I nerded out on that stuff. And that's kind of how I got started. But now here I am, I have this interest, I want to pursue it. I don't have any education. What do you do? So that's where I started I had my side hustle. I started practicing marketing with that. That kind of bled into some other things. I learned SEO on my own. I learned copywriting on my own. I learned all these other things. And I started just doing my own things as practice, but also it was an interest, but it was also practice for me to start doing. After a year or two of that, I had a blog that was ranking #1 locally in my area for my side hustle, which was amazing. And at that time, I didn't understand how SEO worked or anything like that. So if you're familiar with Pat Flynn, he kind of experienced something similar, right? So that was I had my own little Pat Flynn type of moment where it's oh, my website's getting tons of hits. The phone's suddenly ringing off the hook. What did I do to make this happen? So that's where I started learning, what happened, why it happened, how it happened. And that's when I really was this is awesome. So from that point, it took about a year and a half to 2 years later when I got my first break. And so what I did in that time was I put a lot of things into practice and I added it to my resume. And that's what got me a job at a software company, which completely changed the trajectory of my entire career. Because now at that job, I was doing what I loved, which was, it was a software company.
Pause there for a second.
Sure. Yeah.
It's amazing, right? This guy, no formal education, but determination, open-mindedness, and grit. I mean, this is something a lot of small business owners, play business. Let's be honest. They're a lot of times just changing the website around, not doing the stuff that's going to move the needle. This is an example of what happens if you move the needle. So please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I'm a big proponent of. Yeah. So I just basically beefed up my resume, got that job at that software company, and everything changed for me, right? So it was a software company, but my job there was onboarding our customers. And as a marketing software, my job, I had to have some good business and marketing acumen in order to be valuable to the customers that we were onboarding. So there was this technological side from the software that I needed to have a skill set in, but it wouldn't have worked if I didn't have that background in marketing. And again, that background was completely self-taught on my end. But I ended up being, without sounding too arrogant, I ended up being a top performer in that role just because it was something that I ate, slept, and breathed it. You know what I mean? Like it was something where for other people on my team, it might've been something, it was just a job to them. Right. But I was there because I wanted it. That was the dream all along. Right. So.
How old were you when that happened? That age?
Well, I want to say I was in my mid 20s. I was probably 25 or 26. I want to say maybe 27, because I didn't figure all this out. I didn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I was maybe 24 when I finally figured it out. So it was somewhere around that timeline.
Amazing. So how did that experience set you up for what you're doing today? I mean, obviously we know the extensive experience in marketing, building that resume to get a chance, taking that chance, learning what you need. How did that turn into Moxie today?
Great questions. Yeah. So basically, as I went through that job, I was at that software company about 3 years and just decided, I had kind of not to sound like a jerk, but I had kind of outgrown it in some ways. And so the next job I took, they kind of poached me from that company, and they made a lot of promises to me if I took that job. So I got to work remotely, which was a goal of mine for a few years leading up to that. Actually, they increased my salary by $25,000. So I was almost making near six figures just by taking that job alone, which is awesome for someone in their late 20s. Right. And working remote, I got to relocate and move out of state somewhere where I wanted to live for years as well. And so all those things that was me achieving a lot of goals. And so that was kind of the first step. And then as I took those jobs, because it's working at that software company, there is a very strong inherent culture there where once you leave, it's very non-corporate. It's very different. And so me working a few other jobs was kind of like a reverse detox from a company that's very strong about their culture, where I'm working for smaller businesses where I'm much more of a lead in something, but it's a smaller business. And after working those jobs long enough, it was like, this is really cool. And I love what I'm doing. And I love that I have this accountability. I love the responsibility, and I love the paycheck, but there's no reason why I couldn't be doing this on my own. And so, and for years leading up to that, I always wanted to have my own business, because I realized when I was in my late 20s, I realized I am not employable. I don't like working for people. And I just kind of had to pretend long enough until I figured out how I was going to not work for people anymore. And so I took two jobs that lasted about 3 years. I was at those two final jobs for about 3 years. And then I started HitMoxie, and it started out as a freelancing company where I was basically just doing the same thing I had been doing previously for the prior 6 years or so. And I was just doing it on my own, which meant I could charge more, and I got to keep, all the profits and all that type of stuff. So.
Heck yeah. And I got to say, for someone who's not employable, you do a damn fine job.
Thank you. I would like to think so.
And so how long a transition has it been since then? Maybe 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, that's about right. It's been about 2 or 3 years since let's see here. I left that job mid 2019. So it's been about 3 years. Yep.
So how did, obviously there's a lot of things that happened since you started your first business, COVID happened, how has that affected your business, and, how has it gone these last 2 or 3 years?
It's so funny. Like in terms of I just quit my job end of 2019, and a month and a half later, the whole COVID thing happened. And it was funny because even as a new freelancer doing this full time, having all this freedom, where I probably wasn't super responsible with that freedom, if I'm being quite honest, 2020 was a great year for my business. It was really good. And I just think part of it was the timing of it, probably because a lot of businesses were in a position where there's a lot of uncertainty. And so having a freelancer in their back pocket versus the risk of hiring someone and not being able to bring them into the office, that had some appeal. So I think that was part of it. And I was very blessed for that reason. It was great.
Awesome. So how's that, obviously that's gives you great opportunity. You're just someone who just creates that opportunity, right? You get the skills to get in the door, and then you take it as far as you can into the next item, right? So
absolutely,
you get the skills you need, you get lucky in a way, the world changes. Now, how many of those customers are sticking with you? Has your business model evolved over that time to where, you're taking in, different types of customers? Or why don't you explain a little bit about, what you guys do?
Yeah, great. So yeah, and as I said before, that's how HitMoxie started. What it has evolved into is more of a software company. So I now have a software where I'm basically a competitor to the software company that I used to work at. And it's been great. So the transition period, I've fired a lot of clients in the last 18 months, 2 years or so. And some of them just because it was a sink of my time. And, since then I've been able to hire a couple employees and things like that as well. So it was a sink on, it wasn't productive, even just having my employees do certain things for these clients. It was very touch and go. All these things it was a big learning process for me for sure. And so what we've kind of settled into is we still provide services, but we're much more selective in terms of the people we work with, because we want to make sure we stick to our strengths, as with any business should. And then alongside that, we have started our software company that provides a wonderful solution for small businesses in terms of marketing automation, email marketing, SMS marketing, Google review management, all sorts of very amazing things that a small business needs in this day and age. It's been great.
So if you could describe your perfect customer to me and my audience, that way, if you're listening to this and this sounds like you, we're going to leak his information here in a minute, but describe your perfect customer to us.
Mm-hmm. Our perfect customer tends to be someone in the info marketing space. So they have either an online course or some sort of info product that they're selling, coaching. We love coaches and info marketers, things like that. Anyone that has some sort of more intangible value proposition. But we also work with people, I have a client that his specialty is he manufactures signs and vehicle wraps and things like that. And we love them. And in fact, we're actually creating a new suite of software just for that niche alone. So it's been great. But yeah, my background has always been working with info marketers and course creators and things like that. So myself and my employees know that world very well. But beyond that, there's all sorts of other types of businesses and industries that we work very well with.
Rock solid. And so understanding, where you've come from, someone who's benefited from the right work with the right tailwinds, let's be candid here. Let's talk about what are some potential struggles you see coming in the future, if any, headwinds or items that, you're looking to be prepared for, or, not warn my audience, but things you're looking at.
Sure. Yeah. I think for a business in our stage, any business in our stage, what they tend to encounter is finding the right people to hire and work with you. And then also key partnerships and joint ventures and things like that. Those things I'm learning and I've realized are very challenging to navigate. They're good. It's a good type of pain and a good type of growth. But it takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources to make the right fit for those things. So that's one thing we've run into. And then also is just scaling our services and making sure we're always providing value to our clients. That's, ultimate priority number one right there is making sure that we're providing value for our clients and doing things that support them. Because, quite honestly, as any business owner knows, if the customer's happy, then it works out for you in the long run. It's a win-win situation.
Now, Braxton, are you running any offers currently or anything that would make a listener say, hey, I want to act now? Is there anything like that you guys currently have running?
Great question. We know our value and we love the product that we offer. So we always do things like free demos and things like that of our software for those that are interested. But again, yeah, so I would say that there's that. On top of that, we do also provide, I have a lot of an email list where we provide a lot of free information, free training about this type of platform and about these type of tools, because to some people it's a new world and they don't understand or realize that it's out there. And so a lot of the things that we provide to our audience is in the form of free training and free education.
Got it. So below in the comments, I'm going to make sure I link his email list as well as a link to a free trial or a demo link for Braxton. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, is there anywhere else that people can follow or find you on social media and keep up the great things you do with HitMoxie?
Yeah, great question. I am very active on LinkedIn, and you'll see me. I have a secondary business, which we didn't touch on quite as much here. And so for that reason, I'm very active on LinkedIn with that as well. But I'm very active on LinkedIn, so people can find me. It's just, I think the path to it is just linkedin.com/the Braxton Wood, THE Braxton Wood. And that's usually the best way to find me. Otherwise, you can just join my email list, reach out to me via my hitmoxie.com site. And, I'm always in touch there as well.
Well, Braxton, thank you so much for stopping by the show today and giving some value, not only in, product and what you're working on, but your life story. I love that, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Till next time.